we made it. You made it. I made it. That guy who's only hanging in the fantasy league because the 9 other guys make him stick in the league year after year. He made it. I'm not talking about Friday, that we are recording Friday, 2 days before the Patriots season opener. We made it back to football. It has been 8 long months since we had actual, real Patriots football on the field. And yeah, I know a lot of last year was depressing. And a lot of us expect this year to be depressing as well. But damn it, this is why we're here, right? To watch, to listen, to record, to write, to report, to analyze. This is why we're here, the real game. So what are we going to start with today? Stuff on the field? No, of course not. We're going to start off the field. And then we're going to get to Jeff Howe of The Athletic for our Bengals preview episode, as well as a little bit of season preview stuff. Though honestly, I feel like if you've been listening to the show long enough, for certainly this summer, like the season preview has been every episode since the start of camp. So there's a little bit of season big picture stuff, more pointed stuff for Sunday's game. But I'm going to start here with an intro that covers 6 different items because there's a lot that's happened over the last couple of days. Not in a big picture, oh my God, emergency pod kind of way, but just in a we should sit down and check in, talk kind of thing. An email, not a meeting. So let's start off with a meeting I had with Eliot Wolf. Number 1, Eliot Wolf and I spoke for an exclusive story you should read if you haven't, and not because it'll make my bosses, the Boston Herald, a little bit happier than they generally are. But this is something that covered pretty much everything I thought you would want to know. Drake Maye's development, where he sees the team right now. We talked about tanking and what the focus is moving forward. So my takeaway from that story, we chatted for about 20 minutes before I wrote this up, is the greatest barrier really right now between you and me and the Patriots is not the concrete or the bricks that make up all of one Patriot placing down headquarters. It's just belief. Eliot Wolf genuinely believes in the roster that he built. This is not surprising. GMs do not sign players that they don't like, but we all know the players the Patriots have are generally players that other teams don't like. So what I'm going to do here for you now is read a couple of quotes where, again, I think you should read the whole story. There's more here, but these are things from Eliot Wolf to me you have not heard anywhere else. And they speak exactly to where we are, as I pitched to the PR staff weeks ago. Let's do a state of the franchise kind of story. On the record, before the opener, this is how he sees things. So I asked him about the offense. 2 weeks ago, he's saying on the record, yeah, we think this offense can support a quarterback. Then they go to Washington, and Washington's number 2 defense whips the starting offensive line city. So leaves him that injury, more on him later. Darian Lowe's already banged up, and things just really aren't so good. So I said, okay, have they at least lived up to your expectations now? This is what Eliot Wolf said. He said, quote, I think it's hard to talk about living up to expectations before we play the games. We don't know how it's going to settle. We've had a lot of moving pieces in the offensive line. We've had a lot of moving pieces at receiver, trying guys at different positions, different groups. We feel good about the groups that we've assembled. We'll see how it goes. Okay, not surprising. Quote number 2, I think this will have your attention a little bit more. Talking about the youth movement, right? The Packer way, he tells us at the combine, hey, we're going to prioritize snaps for younger players more than we have in the past. He goes, quote, I would expect this year we will be getting younger as the year goes along, as opposed to the other direction, whether it means by injury or attrition or whatever. Everyone knows, not everyone, that we're trying to win now, obviously, but there is an eye for the future in developing this core of players that we haven't maybe had the last couple of years. Bingo, there it is. It's all about the core, whether that's extending guys like Mike Onwenu, Kyle Duggar, certainly Christian Barmore, right? Or it's the draft and develop focus with Jalen Polk. Drake Maye is going to be the biggest piece of this, and the other guys that they drafted. It's about the core, the young players. So playing them now and extending them later. Speaking of Drake Maye, again, he was a part of these conversations that led to Jacoby Brissett being named the week 1 starter. It was Gerard Mayo's decision, though he took a long time and many detours to let us know, oh, yeah, it was me making that decision. So I said, can you just give us some more insight into how this happened? Here's what Eliot said. Quote, we just feel like the worst thing that could happen is you put a guy in before he's ready, and then you have to take him out. And whether that's him or somebody in another position, for a young player to not be ready and be put in that position, it can be counterproductive to their career. So then I go, as I think you are right now, why isn't there a veteran quarterback on the roster? Because if Jacoby gets hurt, as we saw in the preseason finale, and everyone's been talking about this for weeks, can you put Drake Maye in there? Because Gerard is committed 100% publicly on the record. Yes, he's the second quarterback. Drake Maye will go in. And Eliot's answer was, well, we'll make an exception because we have confidence in Maye. And Jacoby's been durable, and we're counting on that. But we also have a contingency plan. And so this is why we're going to make an exception with the most important position, the most important player on the roster. That answer, I don't know for a fact. but I would imagine got ripped apart a little bit in other places in the Boston media market. But here's the thing. That's information. Those are quotes. That's access. Not to pat myself on the back, but I think you would want to know from the head of the front office about why the roster looks like it is now, not just because Drake Maye is not starting week one, but just what they feel and what they look like. Again, the barrier between you understanding what this roster is or being inside is not the brick, it's not the doors, it's not the security, right? It's just belief. They like their team more than you do, more than I do. And like you said at the start, we'll see. Okay, that was a long number one. Six pack continues. Number two, Bengals are juggling right now. So Jeff Howe is going to come on and enlighten us a little bit about Jamar Chase's situation, which, if you've been following it all, is not like Brandon Ayuk level. There's a 5-alarm fire, but no one really knows if it's a PETA that's been left in for too long or there's like actually a blaze somewhere, but things aren't good. People have exited. When can we go back in? When is this going to be over? It's just that he's saying today, Friday, there's a contract within reach and I'll be willing to play the contract, but I'm going to be a game time decision. All of which is to say, well, what the hell is going on? My bet, my money is right now that he'll be limited on Sunday. I think he'll play. I don't think someone who has basically not practiced all summer can go play in an NFL game from start to finish. So we won't see that. And he might not be alone. T. Higgins popped up in the injury report on Thursday with a hamstring injury. And I didn't know this, honestly, until today. Higgins has had a long, years-long history with hamstring injuries. So forget that they're generally finicky. You don't want to mess with them because they will bite back very quickly. But he was not a participant in today's practice, which was just a walkthrough, which to me says he's in a little bit of trouble. So there is a world in which the Patriots go into Cincinnati, biggest underdogs, 9-point underdogs of week one, and don't have to deal with Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. Again, I think Chase will be limited. We'll see about Higgins. But if you're someone who, and I wrote about this upset path today in a similar Friday 5, it's a new column I'm doing, you should read it on Fridays, that believes the Patriots can pull the upset. First of all, I talked about it earlier this week. Yes, that's absolutely possible. And those odds might have just increased, even though the Patriots are dealing with their own injuries, which brings us to number 3. City Sal is not going to play. The injury report, as I check my phone now, has not come out just yet. But this dude is not seeing the field in 2 weeks. He got hurt in the preseason finale. That was August 25th. It is September 6th now. Patriots practiced 4 times this week, including a walkthrough today. He's been completely MIA. So an offensive line that was generally a shaky position group to begin with, even at full strength, is now missing a guy who might be their second best offensive lineman by the end of the season, and they need a new left guard. So who is that left guard going to be? It will probably be a combination of 2 guys, Nick Leverett and Michael Jordan. Jordan is on the practice squad because he was one of the 4 guys released on cutdown day to make room for the 4 waiver claims. They've been repping with the starters in practice. I don't really care if it's Nick Leverett or Michael Jordan. Either one is like having a kick me sign slapped in the back of the offensive line if you're a defensive coordinator, especially a defensive coordinator like Lou Anarumo, who, look, that defense stunk last year, but this dude knows how to get into his bag and what to pull out when it comes to third down, and particularly with pressures, simulated or actual blitzes. So the offensive line as a whole, but Arian Lowe has been practicing, which is good. The last few days, Gerard Mayo has been encouraged by his progress dealing with an abdomen injury. If he plays, here's the offensive line. Lowe at left tackle, Nick Leverett or Jordan at left guard, David Andrews at center, Layden Robinson, the 4th-round rookie at right guard, and Mike Onwenu, who told WEEI today, I'm going to be playing right tackle, and he'll be at right tackle. Last note on this, and we'll get to the last 3 notes. The Patriots are going to rotate, and not just with their offensive line, but Gerard Mayo opened this morning's press conference by saying, I watched the game last night, Ravens and the Chiefs, and conditioning, especially in week 1, plays a big factor in winning or losing. And so we're not talking about guys who can run certain 40 times or pass conditioning tests in July. We're talking about like game shape, right? You're in for 10 plays. If you go all out, what else do you have in the reserves? Patriots don't know that yet. So he's left it up to the position coaches. And I would circle these or watch these when you're watching on Sunday: receiver, corner, defensive line, and offensive line, where you're going to see guys come in for different series, maybe a quarter, and then they'll react from there, right? If Nick Leverett starts, Jordan comes in, and Jordan gets posterized, they'll put Nick Leverett in and probably roll with him, right? But they're going to be rotating guys, as Gerard put it, for the next few weeks. So something to keep in mind. All right, number 4. I have a big story on this coming out either Saturday or Sunday, I don't know which one, about DeMarcus Covington, who's really going to be the defensive brain behind all of their game planning, obviously the play calling as a D coordinator. It's not Gerard. And Bill obviously he's being succeeded by Gerard as a head coach. But as a defensive mastermind, this is going to be Covington, because even though he's only 35, even though he's only coached in New England the last 7 or so years, defensive line, outside linebackers as a QC, and he's respected around the league. He worked at the Senior Bowl, did a really good job by everyone who was there, and I got to talk to after the fact. He's working for a defensive head coach, and yet Mayo is not really speaking in the meeting rooms, according to the players that I spoke to this week. It's Covington leading the collaboration of the game plan. It's Covington leading the meetings. It's Covington running the show. And what I've heard from guys, longtime veterans, is to say, number one, they want to be aggressive, because every new defensive coordinator says they're going to be aggressive. No one's going up there on day one of the introductory press conference being like, we're going to rush 4 and then play zone. And I don't know why I'm doing a crappy Trump impression right now. We'll just give you all the yards underneath. No, they say we're going to be aggressive, multiple physical, yada, yada. I'm telling you, longtime veterans, and this is in the story, I'll tell you who they are. Jonathan Jones and Kyle Duggar said to me, look, you're going to know it when you see it. But he has put his own imprint on this system, and it will be very different from what you've been used to the last few years. So something to look for. I think DeMarcus Covington is going to spin the dial. There'll be a lot more disguise, which is saying something for a Patriots defense, right? But they might finish among the highest blitzing teams in the league just because of the coaching change and the personnel that they've carried over. Number 5, this is simple, guys. This came up because of a conversation I had at practice with other beat writers today. We're like, yeah, we're writing these stories, why to watch, everyone's so down. They lost Judon, Barmore. Like, I'm trying a hard time to find reasons to tell people to keep up with this season. I go, hey, it's real football. I talked about this at the top. This is why we're all here. This is why sponsors like you're about to hear from Game Time and PrizePicks are pouring a ton of money into this podcast. And thank you for that support in other places, because they know people are coming together on Sundays for the football. They're listening to podcasts for the football. So even if the Patriots go 3-14 or win however many games that you think they're going to win or lose, it doesn't mean we can't enjoy this. We got 4 months of real football. Okay? This is going to be good. Watch the rookies. Listen to that episode I talked about how to survive a rebuild. All the tips are in there. I'm just saying, don't throw the season out before you even get started here on Sunday. Like this is going to be a good time of year. It always is. It's football. Last one, number 6. Gerard's filmed more OJ today, and not in a big way, not in a way that I'm going to freak out. I'm done. I'm tired, and I realize I do this to myself talking about Gerard in press conferences. I want to talk about him as a football coach, okay? And we will. But on Monday, he said he's going to be as transparent as possible about injuries. Cool. That sounds great. We didn't ask for that. We are going to ask about injuries. And we understand there are competitive boundaries that you can't cross and tell us exactly what the game plan is or who's hurt or who's dinged up or who you're going to sit, whatever. But then today, Friday, when we asked about City So, we already documented, has 3 practices this week and then missed again today for number 4. We'll see. We don't really know. Oh, how's Badarian Lowe? I'm encouraged. Antonio Gibson? Well, anytime anyone goes on the injury report, he went on Thursday with a hip, but sounds like he's going to be good to go. Anytime anyone goes to the injury report, you're worried. Well, duh. But you told us you'd be transparent, and now you're not. So what's the deal? You didn't have to make the promise. You didn't have to make nice. You don't have to do any of this. Of course, we would appreciate it. People at home, you listening right now, would love to know more about injuries. I would love to tell you about them. But if you're going to be transparent, which is an absolute term, either you're transparent or you're not, and that's it, then just don't promise it. That's all. So enough about OJ. Enough about media, enough about press conferences. Let's get to the real football. Jeff Howe of The Athletic, and on the back end, another 4-minute drill. We have Jonathan Jones, not only professional cornerback, but a professional pilot who led off and said he got a big, I would say, bold is not bold enough of a word, an audacious ask by an ex-teammate who said, oh, you can fly a plane? How about you take me almost to the, I don't want to say the equator, but pretty close. Okay, here comes Jeff Howe. Here comes Jonathan Jones. Enjoy week 1. Real football. All right, as promised, Jeff Howe. And Jeff, every time, I got to say it, national NFL insider for The Athletic. It's been 3 months since we had you on. We're doing little Patriots, little big picture stuff. And I was thinking back the last time you came on. I was at a hotel in Dallas covering the Celtics. There was a different presidential candidate available on one side. The Patriots were most in the news because Drake Maye had not competed for the number 1 job, but had been promoted from number 3 to number 2, all of which is to say it's been a long time since we hung out. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, it's been a little too long.
Yeah. All right. So you did yet another training camp tour this summer. And before we get into the Patriots offense, their defense, make some picks and talk about the game Sunday with the Bengals, which now is complicated by Jamar Chase calling himself a game time decision, not really practicing the last 6 weeks, maybe since I was in Dallas. And then we'll call a game and do some prize picks. Let's get into a little scuttlebutt around the league when you talk to other teams about the Patriots.
Some people, like generally speaking, so some of this is spawned from the league survey that I had that ran this week, where it's like, who are 3 teams that will surprise in a good way, bad way? There was only one official answer that the Patriots would surprise in a good way, which, basically means exceed expectations. But there were people who were considering using the Patriots and just kind of discarded them when they put their official 3 teams. So there's some belief that the Patriots are going to bounce back in relative fashion. Like, let's keep things in perspective here. Number one, they have a brutal schedule. And number 2, they're still at the first stage, more or less, of a rebuild that's going to take quite a while. So,
when you talk about relative fashion, is this like your cousin who got expelled from high school and then like now enrolled in community college and got through a semester? Like, what do you want? Like, they're going to bounce back in relative fashion of all the relatives that you have.
Hey, I failed out of a certain university in New England and wound up in community college, and I turned out just fine. Okay,
exactly, so, right? Yeah, you're one of the rebuild, Jeff Howe rebuld. Yeah,
we're all here for a happy ending, so everything will be just fine for the Patriots because of that. No, I mean, look, I think they should be competitive. They should play hard. I think there's going to be a little bit of a reinvigoration under the new staff. I think all the things that you're hearing about, like the good vibes and all that stuff, I think that will translate to a better product on the field. I still don't believe the Patriots are going to win many games this season, but generally, I think.
So everyone's like lukewarm about them. There was except for that one person who said they'll exceed expectations. No one was really firm about the Patriots, just they are what they are.
Yeah, I mean, and exceed expectations, if you're the Patriots, what's that mean? Like 7 wins? And quite frankly, I don't know if 7 wins is really all that good of a season, because that puts you drafting 10th or 12th or something, and that's not ideal. I'm sure we can get into this too, but I still maintain that best case scenario, they play hard, similar to the Cardinals last year. They show that they can adapt to the scheme. They're going to be difficult to beat. Teams are going to walk away from these games on Sunday and say, oh, wow, you know what? That was a tough team to play. I respect them. They're just not quite there yet. And then at some point, you do enough where Drake Maye is going to give you some positive momentum toward 2025 and finish with 3 or 4 wins, get you another top 5 pick, and keep building and accelerate that rebuild. I personally think that's the best case scenario.
Okay, very good. Before we get into the Patriots offense, not only just Sunday against the Bengals or this entire season and what that looks like with Drake Maye or Alex Van Pelt or Jalen Polk or anybody else, Jeff, I have a question for you. If you do not have a press pass and you needed to go to certain football games, do you have a particular site that may or may not be called gametime.co that you would prefer to find your tickets to go to NFL games?
I'm willing to listen.
I think you should go to Game Time. And here's the thing. I've talked about them before. I've gone to Red Sox games this year using Game Time. But you are listening to this podcast because you're a football fan. And the Patriots have a home opener against Mike McDonald, Jeff's new best friend. They're going to play Miami and Houston in October, the best time of year, in my opinion, for Gillette Stadium. And then the Jets just before Halloween. I've told you already the Patriots are beating a playoff team. I think it'll be one of them, if not maybe the Chargers who come in December or the Bills. Whoever it is, go to Game Time where they've got the lowest price guarantee and credit you 110% of the difference if you find a lower price elsewhere with another ticket market. Not to mention their all-in pricing helps you skip those pesky fees, and you can find your seat view. Very helpful when I go to Fenway. So do all of this with Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals and great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Download, like Jeff is, the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CLNS. It's simple. CLNS for $20 off your first purchase to any of those Patriots games, college games, concerts, whatever you want. Terms do apply. Again, just create an account like Jeff. Redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Because what time is it? It's Game Time. On to the Patriots offense. So I just want to ask you a simple question. Who gets more starts this season, Jacoby Brissett or Drake Maye?
Drake Maye, because I think the wins and losses, I think you know how my feelings are. Like, I just don't think they're going to win enough for Jacoby to justify maintaining that job. I mean, at some point, you're going to need to concentrate on 2025. If for somehow they exceed expectations, let's say they're 4-3 in the first, month and a half, and all of a sudden that kind of forces their hand, they have to stick with Jacoby Brissett. But if you're not winning, at some point, you just have to focus on the future. And with Drake Maye coming on the last couple of weeks of training camp in the preseason, you've got to fall back on that and say, hey, this guy might not have given you the best chance to win now or in week 1 through week X. But at this point, the winning isn't happening. So it's time to see what Drake Maye can do. Projecting that the offensive line isn't an unmitigated disaster. Like, if it's the worst offensive line in the league and they can't protect anybody, then you got to try to figure out what you're going to do. But I don't think the wins are going to come. The schedule's too hard. And I think eventually you have to build toward next season.
I am with you. The other way to answer this question, right, is assuming that if and when Drake Maye does take the reins, and it will be sometime this season, let's be clear about that. Do you believe that it'll happen before or after Halloween, or actually the week after? So they're going to play the Jets on October 27th. That's week 8, right? If Jacoby Brissett starts the next game, which off the top of my head is not reaching, but it's the first week in November, that'll get you 9 starts. And to me, I think unless they're competitive enough, or the situation is just so bad that, as I said in the beginning, as Eliot Wolf told me, we think the worst thing you can do is put a guy in before he's ready and then have to take him out. Like, that means you're basically believing that they'll sit Drake Maye until Thanksgiving. And I know, as you've written and talked about and reported, they've got time and they know it, and they're going to use that time. But I do think because of how Drake closed the gap late in the year, and I've circled that second Jets game, October 27th, it's right after they get back from London, it's week 8. That, to me, even as good as the Jets defense is, would be an ideal time, or when I think things will line up to put Drake Maye in there. So I'm with you. We talked a lot about the quarterbacks. I think everyone knows what Jacoby is, somewhere between the 25th and 30th best quarterback in the league. One number that's being overlooked, though, and Doug Kide, your friend and mine, did a great job writing about this week, as I've said before, but didn't dive in as deep. 1.4% interception rate for Jacoby Brissett in his career. Lowest in NFL history.
Wow.
So as we all watch Mac Jones give the ball away a la Candy on Halloween late last year, and Bailey Zappa do the same, that just stopping the bleeding in that kind of way, I think, is going to have a bigger impact than we know. Am I right or wrong, though?
No, yeah, absolutely. Because that's going to keep the defense engaged. I mean, I think one thing that happened last year was the defense was looking across the ball and saying, you guys can't score. You're giving the ball away. You're putting them in bad field position. And as much as you can possibly, the defense deserves credit for not kind of folding up shop earlier than they did. And I'm not saying they were bad by any stretch, but toward the end of the season, like, they just weren't as inspired. And who can blame them for it? I mean, what did the offense have? Like 3 or 4 straight, or they had like 3 or 4 straight games when they allowed 10 or fewer points and they lost them all. Like, they were the first team in like 85 years to do something like that. I mean, that is a soul crushing type of thing for a defense to endure. And you see it with teams, 2 or 3 teams like that almost every single year. Look at what happened with the Jets at times last season. And, defensively, like, they were supposed to be outstanding, and they had mental lapses because they knew they weren't going to win a lot of those games. So if Jacoby, whether or not, I don't know, ceiling is a top 20 offense, and I think that's being generous. Let's say they're the 20th ranked offense, but Jacoby's keeping the ball secure. He's not giving it away. And they're at least able to get into the fourth quarter of some of these games saying, all right, well, if a couple things go right, maybe you steal one here. Again, that's going to keep the defense playing harder. And I think that is an important aspect.
So I think that's a good point, and especially as someone who talked to Adrian Phillips and Devon Gotcha after a couple of those losses, and they were telling me, well, I guess we got to hold them 0 next week. And Gotcha went as far as to say, well, Devontae Parker dropped the ball, and Tyquan's got to bring in that ball. Like, there is it's not tangible, right? The things that you're talking about, but there is something to say, hey, when the season's inevitably lost, like we all expect it to be, and that's fine. This is year 1 of a rebuild. How do you keep guys fighting? It's not just the coaching, which is designed to organize and motivate. That's the job of the coaching staff. But offensively, can you motivate your own teammates? And I think Jacoby or Drake will do that, because Drake also, for all of the concerns about like, oh, He'll, throw certain interceptions, try to be Superman in college. His turnover-worthy play rate as a college player was among the best in the country in the FBS. So I think that was a little overstated. And even when you could admit, and I can too, he threw some bad picks late in the year last year for North Carolina. You understood them to a degree because of the lack of surrounding talent around him. It's not great now that he's in the NFL, but we'll move on. Quarterbacks aside, give me just an X factor where you're talking about that ceiling being 20, maybe 22, 22nd best offense in the league. They will get there if blank, or if this position or player does not perform, they might be 32nd as opposed to 22nd.
I think they're going to need to steal some yards. And by that, I mean, you're going to need some explosive players. And, I think you're going to look at Pop Douglas and say, of course, you're going to be incredibly valuable. Can you make some explosive plays where you can turn let's say a 15-yard gain into 40? So you don't have to, I mean, if defenses are going to play a shell and force the Patriots to methodically work their way down the field, I think we all know how that's going to go. If somebody like Javon Baker, who I would defer to you on that, might be inactive on Sunday, but if somebody like Javon Baker can look like he did, at least early going, and show some of that explosiveness, I mean, maybe he could be somebody like that. I mean, I don't know if that can be Tyquan Thornton's game. It might not be. I mean, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that. So, or if like Ramondre all of a sudden, finds some sort of burst and is a nightmare for defenses to kind of bring down. But, that's a lot of ifs, and there's no sure things there. I mean, Pop Douglas might be a sure thing as a quality possession type of receiver who can do some shifty things after the catch, but there's a lot of ifs. And without knowing what the offensive line is going to look like, without having a true fundamental understanding of what Alex Van Pelt's offense is going to look like, including some people who've worked with him, who weren't quite sure which type of scheme he would defer to more than any of the others. There's so much to project, and it's you don't really want to go into a season with if.
Okay, so you want 5 X factors. That's what you want. There's no single one.
You're going to need about 5.
Yeah. Look, that's all fair. I think we know where the Patriots are. I think if you're picking one particular, let's call it a hinge point, or a pivot point, that this could, again, take the offense almost single-handedly to heights that people don't expect right now, or bring them all the way down to the bottom. I would say, to your point about explosive plays, I don't see Demario Douglas as being that player, though I do think he will be fed early and often, and we're going to talk about him later. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think it's Tyquan Thornton or KJ Osborne. And I say that knowing that I think Jalen Polk will start sooner than even Drake Maye. I think he'll be in the starting lineup. He deserves those snaps. He'll take over one of the outside spots, probably at the Z. But this is a downfield, deep passing attack. And you need guys downfield that Brissett and or Maye trust to throw it up there. And right now, the way they've been giving these reps to players like Tyquan and KJ Osborne, they're going to start soon. And they're faster. They're better downfield than Jalen Polk, who can win contested catch situations, but has a more well-rounded game. So if this offense is going to boom, it will have to be downfield, dropping bombs to one of those two guys, as we saw Brissett do a little bit. So that's why I think it's with them. I do think it's more likely that one, if not both of them, bust in that kind of scenario, and Polk starts and we get more Pop Douglas, and you'll have more 12 personnel with Henry and Hooper, and they're not going to be X factors. They're just steady Eddies walking around in jerseys that start with an 8. Like that's what they are, regular tight ends, regular dudes. But X factors, I think it has to be the guys downfield. Also because, we haven't talked about this, the offensive line is what it is. Like that unit is not going to get into the top 20. So we could talk about, well, if they protect, they'll have time. I don't think that's a bankable thing about this offense, that the offensive line is going to outperform expectation.
Yeah, I mean, the only way you can is if you really truly scheme it up and you can count on the quick passing game. But I would feel a whole lot better about that if a much more proven starter, I was going to screw it. If Tom Brady was a quarterback, I would feel good about him being able to get the ball out quickly. That's just, obviously that's not realistic. But you know what? Like Alex Van Pelt, we've talked about this before, and I think you kind of rolled your eyes at me. But like what Alex Van Pelt did with that offense and Joe Flacco last year, I thought was one of the coolest stories in the league, especially in December.
Did I roll my eyes?
Maybe it was
I agree with that now, hearing it, but I may have.
It was somebody else. Okay. Somebody else. It could have been somebody else then. But I thought that was a really cool development. I thought the Joe Flacco story last year was one of my favorite stories of the regular season. The guy came off the couch basically on Thanksgiving and had like the best statistical stretch of his career. Like, that's wild. That's not supposed to happen. So like, if Alex Van Pelt's a miracle worker and it translates to this season, then fantastic. But that's another one of those ifs.
Yeah. All right. I just talked about, I don't think the offensive line can exceed expectations. This is a long-term play more than most, mostly just given the talent available, right? It's not that they're not going to try. It's not that Scott Peters stinks as an offensive line coach, to be clear. It's just, you've got, two journeyman backups fighting for a spot at left guard right now due to injury, and then a 4th-round rookie at right guard, and then David Andrews and Michael Wanu, and you're crossing your fingers at left tackle all season. Overall, though, does this offense, if I put them 27th in the league, do you think they'll be a over-under, a bottom 5 unit in the NFL, or would they be better than that?
No, I think that's fair. 27 is probably pretty fair. I mean,
it's over-under, not fair or unfair, Jeff. I know I picked a good line.
I'll go under.
Bottom 5, okay.
Yeah, I think like 27th or worse.
Right.
I started this QB stock report this week. We're going to do this every Tuesday. I'm not here trying to plug that, but I think I had Jacoby as 30th or 31st in quarterback rankings. So, the one thing that could change that is if Drake Maye comes in and kind of lights a fire into the offense. And, another part of that too could be, all right, let's say they're 7 games in, they've got 1 win. They're going to turn to Drake Maye, but at least they've figured out something with the offensive line, and they know that they're going to be able to do some things to help Drake Maye find some success. They rely on that natural ability of his, and he starts to play really well. I'm not saying anywhere close to like a CJ Stroud level, but just really well for a rookie. That gets them over on the above 27. I don't know, ranking closer to 20, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's hard for me to sit here and say that I have too many questions in the offensive line. Still a little unproven at the skill positions, of course, not knowing what's going on at quarterback in a new system, and saying I would feel good about, being better than a 27th ranked offense in terms of points scored.
I think they'll be better than bottom 5, but then you're talking 26th or 27th. Like, I don't think they really crack the top 20 as you suggested. And I would say the optimist case would be, hey guys, they're going to run the ball and they have good running backs. I'm baking in an Antonio Gibson bounce back there, right? Like, and there's a big, fumble fly in the middle of those, whatever I just baked. But if you remove that and he doesn't have to play a major role, even though I think he will as both a receiver and rusher, like, there are a lot of teams with worse running backs, even contending teams, than those two. Of course, the problem is baked into their results and their stats and their production is the fact that they need holes to be blocked for them. And the offensive line is just not really suited to do that right now. Outside zone scheme should help a little bit. I think Ramondre Stevenson will average more than 4 yards a carry like he did last year. But the numbers, even after contact for him, weren't as good as we saw a year ago. So the case would be they can control the ball, they'll run it, they'll play good defense. I just don't think that formula is going to work. You need something to complement that. And to your point, Drake Maye creating on his own, extending plays to overcome the offensive line, or being able to throw it deep to catch up quickly, as opposed to methodical offense, could help that. I just think it's too early to bank on that right now in the season. All right, let's go to defense. We have some breaking news. T. Higgins, I mentioned in the beginning, tweaked his hamstring this week in practice. Generally not a good thing, especially if you have a hamstring problem, is officially doubtful for Sunday. So before we get into Cincinnati, I want to say that because Jamar Chase, if he's limited, you have the Bengals' 2 best offensive players outside of Joe Burrow, and certainly his 2 best receivers, not on the field at times whenever Chase would sit, assuming that T. Higgins also sits the entire game, which most people who are doubtful tend to do. Zooming out, though, similar question for the defense. If I put the over-under for their final season ranking in points allowed, you're either, and it's 11.5. Do you think this will be a top 11 defense or 12 down to 32 somewhere?
12 and down, because last year, I believe they were 15th.
Yep. Higher in other metrics, but yeah.
But if we're going by points scored, which is my favorite one to go with, because I know what it means, losing Barmore for potentially the entire season, but certainly the opening stretch and probably then some. Having to trade Matt Judon, who I know was out for a chunk of last season anyway, but still would have been your best defensive player. That's a lot. And it's hard for me to look at that and say, all right, well, you just took two of your best pieces and they're not here anymore, regardless of what they did last year. It's hard for me to say that they're going to all of a sudden be a better defense. So I think somewhere between 15th and 20th.
Yeah, I agree. I think 12 is a good place to aim. And again, it just comes down to the talent. And people don't want to hear this. We've been talking about this for a while. But if you're an offensive coordinator, you're Dan Pitcher of the Bengals, trying to scheme against them right now. And there's actually video that leaked of I think it was 7-on-7s at Bengals practice this week, where you have the scout team defense wearing certain pennies of the numbers of the players that the staff has circled, like, okay, we need to know where Jabril Peppers is. There was a guy with a 5 jersey. There was another one with a 23 jersey. Then you get down to 48, which folks probably know, but some might not. That's Jelani Tavai. Those 3 guys plus Christian Gonzalez are the players we need to watch for or know when you're scheming for this defense. It's not 90, Christian Barmore, he mentioned. It's not number 9 anymore, Matt Judon, who's obviously a Falcon. And there's only so much you can do playing tight together defense when you don't have identifiable problems that offenses go, okay, he's a game wrecker. We need to double team him, block him, chip, whatever it is. And again, I think it'll be a good defense, but considering the schedule and the blue chip talent might just be Christian Gonzalez, it's a little bit to ask for. But again, I'll do the same question. If this defense outperforms expectation, they are top 10, let's say, or they drop 20 or below, that X factor, that hinge point, the pivot point, who or what player or position would that be in your mind?
I wanted to say I was fully prepared until about 10 seconds ago to say it has to be Christian Gonzalez. But if you want to say what's going to take them to get into the top 10 to 12, I don't think a single cornerback is going to be capable of elevating you that much. Now, granted, Gonzalez playing more than 4 games and playing at a high level would certainly qualify for a team that could be in the better than 15th. But if you want to get into that level where you're really causing concern for opposing offenses, it's going to be Josh Uche and Keon White. And I think those guys are both going to have outstanding, like the best seasons of their careers. And, we've been waiting on Josh Uche to kind of do that for quite a while. I mean, if he doesn't do it by the time he's 45, we'll still be sitting here on this podcast saying we're waiting for the Josh Uche breakout. But I think that has to be the difference. You need to have some game records on the edge. And look, we've seen it flashes. That doesn't necessarily, it's not like totally unrealistic to think that it could happen. But eventually you need guys to break from who they've shown you they are.
Yeah. And I've used the line, can I just see Christian Gonzalez start a 5th game? Like, we annoy him and see him as a blue chip player. He was a surefire 1st-round pick, excellent athlete, plays a premium position, everything you want physically, balled out last September. But I'm just not willing to crown him yet until I see it more, especially given like a so-so summer. Keon White, can I just see him get a 5th quarterback hit? Like or it might be 6 if he had 5 last year. I know it's 4 or 5. To me, even if the Patriots believe wholeheartedly he's ready to replace Matt Judon, a 4-time Pro Bowler who nearly set the single season record for sacks for your franchise 2 seasons ago, and then the year before that, he needs to show me a little bit more. But to the point, I think if you're going, okay, what could change this? It is the ability to rush with 4. Because if not, this will be a high blitz defense. And it doesn't have to be like a standard 4-down rush. They'll need to get creative with it, which brings me to my X factor. And I said, a player or a position, and I'm breaking the rules because I'm picking a coach. Mine is DeMarcus Covington. He's taken over the defense, and they expect to spin the dial and be creative and use sim pressures and all these different things. He needs to be locked in more than anybody. This is the rookie that needs to stand out for the Patriots to take a leap or surprise this season, because the less talent you have, the more coaching matters. The more talent you have, just don't screw it up. Put them in the right place. Let them go to work. This team lost a lot of talent, which means that's more pressure on the coaching staff. And guys are never going to talk publicly in a way about their boss that makes them sound bad. So I'm not just going to say what John Jones told me and Kyle Duggar did about Covington. I'm just going to run with in print. But there are ways to say he's okay without telling me what they did. which is they're very excited about it. They're bought in. They know what good defense looks like, what it feels like. And it sounds like Covington's ready to put them in a place, in a position to do that week after week after week. And if he doesn't, we'll see it, and they'll be bottom 20. Bottom 20. 20 or worse.
I mean, look, we've heard enough good things about Covington for quite a while. And from my impression, he's a player's coach. So that's important. It's not like, I mean, not to, I'm not trying to go after low-hanging fruit here, but like Matt Patricia, when he left for Detroit, we heard so many good things from the Patriots who were like, oh, you know what? He's like a brother, like a father, an uncle, whatever. Like so many guys loved him. And then he went to Detroit and he was the opposite of that. So, you want to see how people handle these promotions.
Well, he was just the uncle at Thanksgiving that everyone rushes to take a seat at the opposite end of the table from.
yeah, it wasn't great. Not in Detroit, and we know the history is
here or Philly or pretty much everyone but Underdog Fantasy, where you can watch him on Coach with Bill Belichick once a week on YouTube.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we don't need to spend too much more time on that. My point was like, Covington wants to be a player's coach. He wants to empower the players. I think that is only natural to be working with Gerard Mayo, to feel that way and to coach that way. So, look, I'm intrigued by what Covington can do.
Yeah. All right. Are they going to exceed? Or, let me step back. I think a couple players of note, too, that would be outside looking in, runners up for this X Factor conversation. Keanu White is a big one. You already hit on it. I talk about Daniel Ekuwale, who did not receive exactly a ringing endorsement from his position coach, Jerry Montgomery. And I think you probably missed this because this is like in the weeds Patriot beat stuff. He said, yeah, I mean, he had a decent camp. It's time to shit or get off the pot. And that is a quote from his position coach. Like, we'll see what happens. Behind him is Jeremiah Farms Jr. and Eric Johnson, who they claimed last week off of waivers 2 weeks ago. It's not getting late soon, but it's a very shallow defensive line group. So health there is going to be paramount. And I forgot the guy who is going to be most paramount, especially to the run defense, which is Devon Gotcha. If he goes down, the middle collapses in a way that, like, if you lose your starting shortstop, your defense is deeply affected in baseball. And that's what he's going to be for them. Not only just holding up double teams, but really preventing the guys I just mentioned, Eric Johnson. You can even go to Tristan Hill in the practice squad from having to step in and play a position they're just not equipped to handle. So there's them. Jabril Peppers, I think, is going to make the Pro Bowl. Third safety, Jalen Hawkins, is going to be really important. The way they love to play nickel and three safety, their base personnel. And sometimes they'll go three corner. Marcus Jones brings me to another one. Didn't have a great camp. Hurt for some of that, and that's to be it. But if I'm the Bengals and Higgins and Chase were healthy, I go, all right, I'll just pick him the slot. Like, let's see what 25's got, because he didn't play basically all of last year. And the year before, didn't even really play in the slot. Cosign. Beautiful.
You've said it all.
Will they exceed expectations or underwhelm? And I said 11.5, which you had said, I'll take the under. So let me move this down for you. 13.5. Do you think this will be a top 13, just above average defense by the end of the year?
No, I think they'll be average.
So you're taking it to 15 to 20 since you had already answered this question.
Yeah. Yep, that's where I'm going.
All right, very good. So here we go. Pats Bengals this Sunday. I already told you about Jamar Chase. Told you about T. Higgins. Patriots offensive line is a little dinged up, but not so bad. And it looks like Antonio Gibson will be questionable. So as you are setting your fantasy lineups and you are putting in perhaps some money other places, I'm going to encourage you again to play PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, because here it's just you against the numbers. This is the simplest. It's the fastest. I find it to be the most fun way to win money while you watch sports. You just pick more or less and 2 or more stat projections. I did this last night, looking ahead to baseball games, and it was easy. It was simple. I didn't have to watch the whole game. I just checked my PrizePicks lineup a little bit later, and it could be Pop Douglas catches. It could be Ramondre Stevenson touchdowns. It could be Lamar Jackson or Travis Kelce or Patrick Mahomes, as we saw last night. Whatever you want. PrizePicks lets you win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks, and it's the only real money daily fantasy platform. Let me say that again. Real money daily fantasy platform with an insurance policy where if someone in your lineup, any of the guys I just mentioned, gets hurt, your lineup is still intact. So do this whether it's in NBA, MLB, or certainly NFL coming up, and download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CLNS for $50 instantly when you play $5. That's $50 for free, so long as you play $5. Maybe not entirely free, but you don't even need to win to get that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right. I teased this last week. I'm going to give out 2 picks right now. These are very simple. Demario Douglas somehow has an over line of 36.5 receiving yards. You can pick more or you can pick less. I'm going to go with more. As a guy who is the leading receiver all of camp, prime for a year two leap, their best receiver, period. I believe he will have more than 36.5 receiving yards for the Patriots on Sunday. On the opposite side, because when you make these lines with PrizePicks, you have to pick someone from another team. Let's go to the Bengals. Even if you think the Patriots are going to win, or if you think they'll get blown out, I like Evan McPherson, the Bengals kicker, one of the best in the entire league, to go more than 1.5 field goals. We had 4 last night with Chiefs Bengals. Red zone offense is really difficult, but especially early in the season, when you don't have your timing down, everything's new, and you're playing a pretty good defense, which you know the Patriots have. I bet Evan McPherson hits 2 field goals or more, and you should put that in. More receiving yards for Demario Douglas, more field goals for Evan McPherson, and those are your PrizePicks picks of the week. So, if you're picking a winner, Jeff, on Sunday, Pats Bengals, I'll lay out a case for a possible Patriots upset, but I'll do that after the fact. Just give me a score here. Give me. How do you see this game going?
Well, as we'll jump off of what you were just saying. I was thinking the Bengals would have 23 points, which would give McPherson 3 field goals. So I would say Bengals 23, Patriots 13.
Okay, why?
I mean, the Bengals are a better team. I think Joe Burrow is going to play ticked off this season. I mean, missing as much time as he did last year, having to play through as much as he did last year. We haven't seen the real Joe Burrow in over a year now. And if there's anybody who represents I hate doing this, but I'm not comparing him to Tom Brady. But if there's anybody who has that killer instinct like that, I'm going to take it personal thing, like Brady. I think Burrow is the closest thing to it in today's current landscape. So I think you're going to see him all ticked off, regardless of who he has on the field with him. I do agree. I think they should struggle because, as you said, T. Higgins is doubtful, which means he's probably not going to play. That's the definition of doubtful, probably not. So we'll do that. And then we don't know what Jamar Chase is going to do. I would assume he's going to play, but we'll see. And they lost Tyler Boyd too. So and Joe Mixon. So this is a team, Joe Burrow is kind of working through a bunch of stuff here. But I still think he is the second or third best quarterback in the league. And I think that'll be enough for him to kind of get the Bengals through what I expect to be a sloppy game.
It will be a sloppy game. And the Bengals are particularly sloppy in weeks 1 and 2. And that's since 2020. They're 1-7 in weeks 1 and 2 over the last 4 seasons. And that is my starting case for a possible Patriots upset, which I said last week on this podcast. I think the Patriots will be the last winless team in the NFL, so I don't think they're going to win Sunday. But if you were to believe, and I think this is absolutely possible, it's because the Bengals start slowly. Their 2 best receivers are either limited or going to be entirely out, which it sounds like Higgins will be out. Joe Burrow feels as good as he ever has, something he told reporters this week. But if you're throwing 2 guys that are perfectly, you could say coverable, but easily defended in man-to-man coverage, that unlocks everything for a defense that can now apply more pressure to an offensive line. That did add Trent Brown, and we'll see what version has Orlando Brown Jr., but in the interior, he's kind of average. So this is where I think the Covington piece comes in, is of what they're going to introduce and all these different wrinkles. And that's all the Patriots need, is just to hang around, keep this close. So the Bengals are not particularly explosive. It plays into your good defense, and it comes down to the offense, protecting the ball. Jacoby Brissett, again, 1.4% interception rate for his career, lower than Tom Brady, lower than everybody but Aaron Rodgers, who has the same career rate in NFL history. If they protect the ball, can run the ball in a defense that was 28th against the run last year by yards allowed per carry, and worse than that by DVOA. Oh, and they lost DJ Reader. Oh, and his replacement, Chris Jenkins, a big defensive tackle out of Michigan, is a second-round pick, is hurt and not playing. That, to me, is a meaty, open interior of that defense that the Patriots can play ball control. I'm not saying they will, but I think this game is uglier because of the history, the injuries that the Bengals have right now, and the Patriots will kind of keep this close in a way that, we didn't see any real kick returns last night with the Ravens and Chiefs, but people forget how wacky and weird week 1 gets, Jeff. And we could have one of those that breaks this game open, at least early. I'm just with you. I think the Bengals do pull away ultimately late because, again, a talent is a talent. But this line of the Patriots being 9-point underdogs, the biggest in week 1, I keep looking at it being like, it sounds insane, but that might be a little bit too high.
Yeah, I mean, I predicted them losing by 10. So I don't want to say it's too high, but I don't know. The other part too is Alex Van Pelt is going to know how to game plan against Cincinnati.
Right.
And I guess Brissett to a smaller extent too. So yeah, I absolutely agree with about 99% of the things that you said about the possibility of an upset. And it starts with Cincinnati. And like you said, the slow starts over the last, the previous 4 seasons. They also have a bit of a history of playing down to their opponents when things aren't going really, really well. So yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if this game wasn't close. I don't know if close will translate to a single-digit loss with the Bengals, not pulling away in the fourth quarter. But it's one of 15 or 16 really difficult games on this Patriots schedule.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean 2013 Cincinnati. And part of me wants to go like, let's get ugly as hell, maybe scoregami territory and go 19-9. But it's just there's so much here that could go one way or another. But ultimately, if you're going to call the upset, call it. And I'm just not in a position to do that with Nick Leverett and Michael Jordan possibly starting at guard, and then Vidarian Lowe's like your returning champion and left tackle. Like he's going to have to deal with Trey Hendrickson. The Bengals are going to scheme to get Hendrickson one-on-one or force your hand with an overload blitz on the other side. And this is an offensive line that has new coaching staff, it has a new scheme, some new faces, a rookie still in there, right guard. Like there's just a lot here, obviously, fraught for the Patriots offense. But I think in focusing on that, which we have done most of the summer, you forget that other teams have problems too. And the Bengals problems are cropping up real late in places that they don't want. I just think, again, talking to some guys in the locker room this week, they said 2 years ago, when they lost 22-18, maybe that was a scoregami. They knew they could bait Burrow into interceptions with the disguises. Now it's a matter of, okay, we just need to make him work hard, stay in the pocket, go through reads, and hopefully the rush gets there. But as we're speaking now, Josh Uche is officially questionable for Sunday. So part of that pass rush that we talked about could take a hit. So final season record. You are not high in the Patriots. You think they'll have a bottom 5 offense? You think their defense will be average? We didn't talk about special teams. We're not going to talk about special teams. Where do you think they land record-wise at the end of the year?
I'm going to go back to 4-13. Okay. And the 4, like they're not going to be a bad 4-13 team. And I hope that doesn't sound like I'm trying to couch it or whatever. I mean, I'll use the Cardinals again as an example. I can't remember what their record was last year, 4-13, 5-12, somewhere along those lines, where they played hard. You knew they were well coached. Obviously had, Kyler Murray coming back from an injury, but that's a team that drew a lot of teams respect last year. And there's always, the Texans were like that the year before that. So you can have a 4-13 year and look at it and say, hey, you're building towards something. So I would expect it to be 4-13, but they have the Titans, the Cardinals are a couple of games, you're probably going to take one from the Jets because you always do. So there's potentially 3 wins right there. They'll steal one because, every team steals a game at some point. Yeah. So that gets you to 4. I'm not even, I don't even want to predict the Patriots are going to beat the Cardinals because I sit here, I keep saying nice things about them and I mean them because it's just that comes from just talking to other people around the league and how highly regarded they really view this team. Not saying the Cardinals are going to win 12 or 13 games, but it's a well-coached team that is starting to build a decent amount of talent. So look, it's just, if they were playing an average schedule, I might be tempted to say 6, 7, maybe even 8 wins. But I don't see it. It's just it's too hard of a slate.
It's not in the cards. Is that what you're saying?
It is not. It is. I see what you did there, and I'm kind of proud.
Kind of proud. I'll take kind of proud. Kind of proud. Again, print the shirts. The 2024 Patriots. Kind of proud if they get out of here. I'm with you. No one really holds our feet to the fire in these win-loss records at the beginning of the season anyway, right? Unless you were super loud wrong or extreme. And I was loud wrong last year saying 9-8. I think they'll make a push to the playoffs, all the optimism, and then they just poop their pants and go 4-13. This will be, okay, I know I'm looking at a rebuilding team. They're not trying wholeheartedly, I would say, to win. This is a draft and develop year. 4-13 is acceptable. This is an understandable one. They will meet the expectations that are set ahead of them, which is their win total over under is 4.5. That's just what it is. And it's a schedule, and it's a talent, all the stuff that we talked about. So I think they land there as well. There's no such thing as a good 3-14 team, but they lost a lot of games that you just look at. Missed field goal against the Giants. at the end of that game. The Colts disaster internationally. Like maybe you get a couple of those bounces and you go 6-11. Everyone's like, they weren't that good, but you take it because that puts you in a better position for this offseason, which is a whole other story about free agents, which you can find in my exclusive with Eliot Wolf, which I talked about at the beginning of this podcast. Anything we didn't mention or anything you've got your eye on? You got like super hot, spicy take about the rest of the league before we get you out of here?
I mean, if you want to talk Jamar Chase, since it's Bengals week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, please. I teased this at the top. What's the latest with Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase has every right to want more than Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying that he deserves more than Justin Jefferson, but he has every right to start the negotiations a penny over $35 million a year. And we know he's going to come in at somewhere between 32 and 37. That's way too big of a window to say we know for sure where it's going to come in. That's probably why you haven't seen enough progress. It's just it's hard for me to sit here and watch because like Ayuk, you knew where he stood. You knew what his plan was.
Did you though? Did you though?
You did. I think he was consistent. Whereas Chase, I mean, he gets to the point where Zach Taylor says that he's going to practice a couple times during the week 0 bye week, and then he shows up 13 minutes late in street clothes and he's not practicing. So there's a huge disconnect right here. I think you just have to see read the writing on the wall with the Bengals franchise history. You got to commit all the way to one direction or all the way to the other. But I don't know if you want to really sit on the fence with these hold-ins. Just go out and have a great year, and you're going to be the highest paid receiver in NFL history easily.
Cool. Well, if they're selling TVs to raise money because Mike Brown is so cheap out there in Cincinnati, I don't know. Maybe I show up in street clothes on Sunday if I'm Jamar Chase because I know that would make a lot of Patriots fans listening to this right now very, very happy. You have made me happy coming on the show. We have John Jones coming up, another 4-minute drill. I asked him about his worst date ever. And John Jones apparently flakes a lot. Next time we have you on, I might ask you the same question. Sound good?
Yep.
Thanks, pal.
That came to mind. That was fantastic.
All right, another 4-minute drill, Pat's Interference Podcast. We got John Jones here hanging out with us here today. Just gave him the drill. Football question, not football question. We start the clock, and then we go. We were actually chatting the other day about you flying planes. And this is not the start just yet. This is me buying time so I can pull up the clock on my phone. Have you flown anywhere in the last 48 hours since we last talked?
48 hours, no.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to start another football question. Here we go. Hardest receiver to cover early in your career?
Early in my career, I was in the slot a lot. So Miami had Jarvis Landry. He was a tough cover, early in my career.
All right, let's go back to the air. So John learned how to fly, got his pilot's license not too long ago. I want to know the wildest ask by a friend or family member to you about, oh, hey, can you just bring me here real quick?
I don't know. Julian wants to go to the Bahamas, so hey, we'll see. His old teammate, he wants to go to the Bahamas, so that's crazy. That's one of the crazy ones. So.
Would that have happened if he had stayed here?
Maybe so. We'll never know. Should have stayed.
That sounds like a soft no. Moving on. Back to non-football. So Hunger Games wants to make a movie, except that's real life, and it's everyone in this locker room. Who's the last one standing?
Me. Of course.
Of course?
Of course it's me.
Okay, you got to give me a runner-up then.
Runner-up? After me, who could I say would be next? Big Mike. Big Mike, I think he's a good candidate. He knows a lot of information. Maybe Hunter, some guys who can move a little bit but know a lot of information at the same time.
Okay, I was going to say Mike is not moving a whole lot of bit. That's why I call him Big Mike. When's the last time you chatted with Bill Belichick?
It's been a while. I have to check in on him soon.
Yeah.
So he's on Instagram now, so I gotta see what that's about.
He's on everything. What does that make you feel like? This guy is Mr. Media right now. He's got 7 different jobs.
Man, he's enjoying it. Looks like he's enjoying where he's at right now. That's what it looks like to me.
All right, closing in on 2 minutes through the 4-minute drill. What's the worst date you ever went on?
Worst date? Oh, man. It's been some bad ones, but we're not going to reminisce on the past. Happily married, so the old dates don't matter. I got a good one.
Nothing like you screwed this up or like didn't pick up the check or forgot something? Come on.
No, I'm pretty...
You said a lot. We got to get one.
Oh, man, I'm pretty good on dates. I think I've had to flake a couple of times. Obviously early in the career, you never know the schedule and things come up. So a little early flaking. I'd say I was a bad date early in my career.
Okay, so flaky.
Yeah.
Okay, but you learned.
Yeah, for sure. Learn to do better.
Most underrated player or most underrated teammate you've ever had just didn't get enough credit.
Underrated teammates. I mean, as coming in as a special teams guy, I'd have to go with a special teams guy. Probably Ebner, and the things he did for us early, on special teams, right along with Slater. So definitely Ebner.
So what did you see then that we missed? Aside from we're not watching all 22 of special teams kick coverage, right? But he made an impact. He was here for a while. Just
as a PP, I don't think people understand what goes into making sure punts don't go blocked and how much that can change the game. Every coach says, hey, if the punts get blocked, it's like some 90% chance of winning the game or some crazy statistic they throw out. But just a guy who can come in, do those things, and take over.
All right, John Jones gets a day to himself. No family obligations, no practice, no meetings, no work. He's just at home alone. What does the next 12 to 16 hours look like?
Oh, probably wake up, get some good food, maybe go out fishing for a little bit early in the morning, get around to golf, and then fly somewhere for dinner.
That is an ideal solo day. All of those solo activities, you just nailed it. We're under a minute here in the 4-minute drill. We got 2 more. Let's talk about your least favorite media question. You've been here a while. You're the old man here. I think you got a nap later after practice. What's your least favorite media question?
I don't know. A lot of them get redundant, the typical questions that you're going to ask. But least favorite was what happened? Why did we lose? I don't know. At some point, you guys watched the game. You saw the points that were scored or the turnovers or what happened. So I guess why did we lose? I guess that was kind of a typical.
All right, 15 seconds. Let's do the opposite of that. Why are you going to win on Sunday?
Why are we going to win? I think we're going to dominate, dominate the trenches, dominate up front, and then make plays. Just put together some consistent drives on offense, and then on the back end on defense, get off the field.
There it is, clock management, 4 minutes on the dot. He's John Jones and Major Callahan. Thank you very much, bro.